friend. Welcome to Wild and Waking, a sacred space for the woman unraveling what no longer fits, remembering the truth that's always lived inside her, reclaiming her joy, her voice, her power, and rising fully, fiercely, and without apology. I'm your host, Emily Rushell, and together we'll explore what it means to live in alignment, lead with soul, and awaken a life of abundance, authenticity, and purpose. Let's begin. Hi, friends. Welcome back to Wild and Waking. Today, I'm joined by Paige Christiansen. We got connected through a call out that I put on Threads that is so real for so many women in this community right now who are in the thick of parenting and have been on this, very intentional journey of trying to understand themselves and the world around them and kind of unraveling these conditions and expectations, this like good girl mentality and this like reclamation of voice and sovereignty, and are now turning towards their kids and wondering, like, how do we integrate this? How do we parent them in a way that honors who they are, allows them to use their voice, feel their feelings, all the things, and also like stay sane, maintain a harmonious family dynamic, teach thoughtfulness and kindness and all of the above. So that's how we got connected. And I love the perspective that she is going to bring to the table in the work that she is doing in the world. Paige, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I loved that thread. I was like, this is like so much of what is going on for me, or that what I feel my life has accumulated to be able to talk about. So I'm glad that you put it out. And I'm glad that I think it was Robin who suggested me. So shout out, Robin.
I love it. Okay. For someone meeting you for the first time, myself included, give us a little context of who you are, where you are, and ultimately what led you into the work that you're doing today.
Well, you could call me a human potential expert and really more of a life and an energetic and business strategist. So I have been in business since 2012, 2013. I started in Facebook ads and things like that back when social media wasn't like, people weren't being hired to do social media for companies, which is crazy to think about now because it's such a big thing. And I started that company. It was successful, but then I realized there was a layer that was missing. And that was that one CEO would get a result. Like the same strategy would be deployed across two people. And then one person would get a result and one person wouldn't. I was like, what is that? And so I just got really, really interested in the personal development side of things. And I was introduced to human design during like a dark night of the soul. Like I had built this company. I had just had a baby. I was in the thick of postpartum and I hated my business. I had built these golden handcuffs and it found me. And Katie is her name. She did my son's reading and he was only 6 months old at the time. And I thought, oh my gosh, like this is him. This is crazy that this already describes a 6-month-old demeanor. So I dove right in. So that was 2016. And I started implementing it in my life and with all of my clients who were struggling with getting the strategy, the business strategy working. And they all just blew it out of the water. Like everything just took off. And then the business made its first million by the time I was 30 years old. I had 2 kids under 2. So I built it with the 2. And majority of that, I was a single mom. So that first marriage didn't work out. And then, and recently I just got remarried to my best friend when I was like 18, 19. I hadn't seen him in like 17 years. We reconnected and got married immediately, had a baby, got pregnant immediately. And now I'm not a single mom anymore. So I have a lot of like range and a lot of perspective around just the energetics of being a mother in different circumstances. And then specifically how to raise our children to honor their truths while honoring ours. And I wouldn't say necessarily maintain a harmonious environment, like where everybody's healthy. But just be strategic around that. And then we do also business consulting as well, because I've built the companies.
Well, and something that comes up so often is like your business and your personal, it's all one and the same. And so like having the awareness to integrate and what that looks like to really thread your life in a way that supports you by design is everything.
Yeah. I've been very lucky and very blessed this time around to really be able to look back and witness what I built and how because I was building it actively with the other 2, and it was like postpartum was not a breeze. with that. And I kind of had to give them to caretakers pretty early. And with this one, I've just been in bed, because I built the audience, I built the business. And so it's been able to support me. And it's been really beautiful.
I have been postpartum as a business owner twice and postpartum in other careers, and it is so different when you have built something and can really slow down and honor the season that you're in. It's uniquely challenging in different ways, but I am so grateful for that experience as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Every day I'm like, even on the hard days, I'm so grateful for those problems.
Hmm. Okay, tell us more about, the idea that brought us together is what so many women in my community have been doing is like unraveling that good girl conditioning and that suppression of self and that contorting of our identity to meet the expectations and the conditions and the rules of these systems and family systems in which we are raised. How do you see that, shaping our identity? And what work have you done or done with your clients to untangle that and kind of reclaim sovereignty on the other side of it?
So for me, I was an incredible people pleaser. I mean, I look back and I'm like, I don't know if there's a bigger people pleaser in the world. I don't know how I functioned. I didn't really, obviously. But just what I came to understand and kind of what I help my clients with is something I call the villain edit. And that is, it doesn't matter anytime that you're trying to not be something, you are being that thing, you are affirming that thing. It's like trying to put a picture over a picture. And so I've asked myself, if I'm people pleasing or I'm trying to be good, then what do I actually believe about me? Like what if I'm trying to be good, I'm trying to prove to everybody I'm good. So I must believe that I'm bad. So what am I trying to overcompensate for, and getting really clear on like the actual self-concept I had and what I believed about myself, which was that I was, too much, like way too much, too loud, too dramatic, too attention seeking. I was too cold, too elitist, just all these things. And really coming to terms and being like, well, I am all of those things, but I'm also all of these things. There's a spectrum. Every bit of us is a spectrum. If we're energy and we're made up of all these different frequencies, then we're both. And we're just oscillating. And so to deny that I'm those things would be to deny the more, welcomed or appreciated aspects of myself. And just kind of changing how I looked at being bad and how I looked at being a villain. And ultimately, nobody has ever agreed upon me, really. So like, if everybody's saying all these different things, then who's right? It's got to be me. I get to decide which one of them's right, because there's no way to prove which ones. Then I decide to choose. I decide to believe this particular thing about myself.
Well, and I think in my experience, so much of the projections that we assume, this like good girl, the appeasement, the what are they going to think, the performance, like you said, is that reflection of the inner world and really the thoughts that we're having about ourselves. So in that villain edit, like what did you rewire or reframe in order to claim those parts of yourselves that had been, you were projecting as flaws?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like which really big ones were just, I mean, almost like I was overly emotional or overly empathetic, because truly deep down, I don't have a lot of my own emotions, right? Like I'm not an emotional person. And so I think I always perceived that as being like sociopathic or not caring or not being a caring person. And so, especially when I found out my human design and I realized I was open in my emotional center, I was like, well, I'm not emotional. You're all emotional and that's fine. But like, I'm not. I'm pretty steady. I'm even Steven. And that doesn't make me a bitch. And that doesn't make me cold. And that doesn't make me mean. And if it did, I don't care at this point. Like, I have to be true to me. And yeah, I think that was the big one, is that people think, or I was afraid that people thought I was or would be like a bitch or mean or cold. But like the truth is, I am all of those things. I can absolutely be the coldest, most frigid person in the room, but I also can be the warmest person.
Right. Why do you think we have so much fear around like being perceived as that certain type of way?
Well, because then we'll die alone and unloved. like on the streets. Like we catastrophize it in our bodies, but ultimately, like when I'm working with my clients and we get to the root of everything, I'm always like, and then what? And then what? And then what? And it always ends with, well, then I'm alone, and then I die, and then I die alone. So literally every single decision we're making or behavior we're deploying is to avoid that thing, which is wild because we all die alone. Nobody dies with us. So we're trying to avoid the one thing that is like for sure about life. Everything we're doing is trying to deploy these like survival strategies. So essentially, like if you can erase the fear of death, life gets really, really good. And I think I also, another one, and this is why I created this world, right, is selfish. I did not want to be seen as
Oh
selfish,
my
which
gosh, yes.
at the end of the day, when you realize like what selfish really like means, like it's not about being uncaring or unkind. It's just centering yourself in your own life. Like crazy concept, and that's okay. I would rather be full of like myself and like centered around than center my life around other people, which is what you do when you're people pleasing and trying to be a good girl.
So, how do you help your clients redefine what selfish means or claim it as being centered around self while destigmatizing the notion of being self centered?
So ultimately what I would do, we start out doing is we look at their human design and we see that ultimately everything they've been saying is bad or wrong about themselves is exactly correct, which really helps with the oxytocin loops. And it can really just rewire immediately your brain because you're seeing things differently, or you're seeing old situations and patterns from a different state. And then you're telling a different story about them. And so, yeah, I always start with the human design. And it's so fascinating because most people are behaving as their exact opposite. Most people are like the exact opposite of who they're born to be. So it's always like the person who's here to be confident and self-centered and center themselves and just like a magnet and just a head turner is almost always the most insecure person in the room and the most disempowered because life starts to tell you who they think you are because they can feel who you are, right? When people feel that, they feel threatened by that. So then they start to tell you, because it's triggering them in their own ways. And so they start deploying their protection mechanisms. And then all of a sudden you have a self-concept that's not you at all.
Well, and I think this leads to the bigger conversation of how women have been systemically disconnected from their power. I think it makes total sense of what it would look like to have the self-actualization of where you are powerful and act in opposition to that for self-preservation.
I talk a lot about this. It's probably one of my hottest of takes is that we're not ready for matriarchy because most women are not ready to take accountability at the level that they need to take accountability and to be so self-focused. And what I mean by that is not blaming anyone for anything in their life. And that includes men. They're not doing this, they're not doing that, they're this, they're that. It's like, girly, like your whole reality is made up of choices you've made. They're small and some are big, but they're all choices you've made. So until you can, I call them power pockets, but whenever there's something that's really uncomfortable in my energy and my field, or at first it's in my body and then it's because it's in my field, I always pull my power back by basically telling the truth about it, which is that I created this in my consciousness. I created this. This is mine. And it neutralizes that for me. And it brings my power back and my attention back to the present moment. So that's all being selfish really is like coming back to you in this moment because it's the only thing that's real, but it's also where the only place you can create anything new from.
How do we change the relationship that we have with our power and be able to pull it back after, maybe a lifetime of that not being standard practice?
It is actually a practice. It takes repetition. And so like one of the first things I have my clients do, and it's the hardest because it all starts to fall apart because you're actually literally taking the energy back. So it cannot exist in your reality anymore. So things are falling apart. It looks bad, right? And so the first thing I'm doing is I'm teaching them how to do that in any uncomfortable moment, is walking through the process of how to pull their power back. And then I'm having them appreciate themselves for having created it in the first place, which is gets them out of that judgment of it being bad or good. And then there's that. There's that is the not judging it bad or good. We don't live in a morally sensitive universe. It does not care if you're good or bad or right or wrong or any of those things. It's belief sensitive and knowing sensitive. And that's why you see people that are bad, evil, quite literally living their best lives. And they're never going to be punished. And they're going to continue to be happy because they're genuinely honoring the truth of who they are. Like that is who they are. I might be the lower frequency, low def version of who they are, but if they're that, then they're also the high def. They're just honoring who they are. And so that would be like the next thing, is kind of just removing all judgment and looking at everybody. It's radical, but looking at everybody in your life as a pattern, a proclivity, or possibility, like that you created.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody. I don't care if they wronged you, then why are they in your life in the first place?
I think there's so much to that.
Like, why? How did they get there, babe?
Right. Right. Well, and then I think, okay, now where do we go from here too? Because I'm thinking, and I think you can probably speak to this in having had a major relationship that ended. Because I think for some people, there's like this journey and the realizations and like, wow, I'm in a life that doesn't fit. But like any move that's not that feels so visceral. What does that process look like?
It's because there's that uncertainty. And then then you start to look for certainty, but that nobody else can give that to you. So for me, having my first marriage end, it kind of was okay, so now what do I want? Now that we're going to be divorced, now that we're going to be separate, and now that my children are going to be at two different homes, what is best case scenario of this? Like, what would be my dream life as far as being not his wife, but always being in each other's lives? And it was co-parenting, also having an extended family, being able to go on vacations together, to be together, to live close, like almost like a village. And when I tell you, that is exactly what we have. We live a mile from each other. His partner's son comes over here when my kids are here. So they're always together. Aurora is going over there. So he's helping raise my baby. Like we're all doing it together. And I have a great co-parenting relationship with my ex-husband's partner. And so you create it. So I know it feels uncertain, but the only person that can give you that certainty is you. And then you have to throw all your energy and your belief and your faith behind that it can be that good and that it can all work out exactly how you created it to. Choices. I chose it. I said, this is my choice. I choose this, 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 and this. And then I woke up every day consciously writing it down, choosing it over and over and over and over again. And if it wasn't that, then I basically was like, well, then this isn't it. This isn't for me.
Okay, this is going to be like a kind of rudimentary question, but I think that this is powerful to touch on, is like, what does the actual daily implementation look like of choice, right? Because I think a lot of people can hold the vision, and like, especially when you're like going through this awakening and doing a lot of this unraveling, like you see the desire and you see the opportunity for what your life could look like, and are still operating under old patterns. So there's a gap there. So what does it actually look like to wake up every day and choose the new reality you're creating?
So for me, the most important aspect and the most unique aspect to each person is going to be their decision-making mechanism. So in human design is your authority. And so first and foremost, I'm always coming back to that. And then I'm never wrong. And I can always just be like, my gut says this. This is a no for me. So it's knowing how you uniquely, because most of your life and the discomfort and the patterns are only there because you weren't making choices based on your authority and you were making them based on your open centers, right? So when we're younger, we're really conditioned in our open centers by our parents. And so we make decisions based off of like, not even the things we value, that we want, that we believe, but what they believe, but we just don't know that. And so for me, it's daily connecting to that, just actually creating a practice around it, just having my husband ask me questions, just so I'm just tapped into that vibration. It looks like waking up and actually taking my pen and paper out and choosing and re-choosing these things over and over and refining the choices. So I look at it in the morning and I look at it at night. And then I'm refining them, their choices. So I'm choosing. And then one of the most important guardrails is I can't make choices for other people. So I can only choose the type of relationship that I'm in. I don't get to choose that it's with him. I can't make those choices for him. So always remembering your choices can't be like, I want my kids to do X, Y, Z. It's like, no, so a good example is this. This is how I thought about it back then. I know it's not true. Ford made my mornings miserable because Ford, to this day, fights me about getting dressed. We've been doing it every day for 10 years. And not as much anymore, but it's still like, it's like we've been doing this forever. What has changed is one day I was like, I can just decide that this isn't going to ruin my day. I can just decide that no matter what Ford's doing, even if he's trying his best to ruin my day, doesn't get to do that. Like I choose my mornings are peaceful. And when he was acting a certain way, I would literally just say, well, my mornings are peaceful. So I wouldn't give him that attention and I wouldn't put my
That
focus
activation.
I wouldn't put my focus on what I didn't want. And then I would look for all the ways my life is peaceful and my morning was peaceful, even if it was just 3 seconds to drink my coffee. So I do that every day. And sometimes I forget that I can do it. I'll be like stressed about something and then I'll be like, wait, I could just choose. What do I
You
want?
just not.
Like, what do I want? Like if it's an amount of money or if it's something, I'm like, why would I stress about this? Like I can just choose it and then do the practice.
Mm-hmm. So what does this work look like with your kids and how has it influenced the way that you parent?
I think it's influenced the way I parent because I had to get a real thick skin in order to be able to parent the kids according to their designs and according to who they are versus what the world thinks I should be doing. For example, Ford is it's going to sound like jargon, but he's a quad right, meaning cognitively, he's receptive. Basically, he's meant to be really like lazy and relaxed in his environment and he doesn't need a lot of food. He picks. And I've had to deal with people thinking that like something was wrong with him and that, he's malnutritioned and that he's not going to grow and, people being upset about that. And I'm like, I promise you it's correct for him. And if he's hungry, he's going to eat. Like if it's correct for like he's going to eat. It's kind of the same with school. Like I don't really love that he's in school and I don't think school is a good environment for him because if he's a quad right and he's active in an environment, that means that that's not the correct environment for him. And he's very active at school. Like he couldn't sit down. And so I realized, wow, we're probably going to have to figure something out for him when he gets a little bit older. It's helping them connect to their unique decision making. So his it's honoring that as best as I can while also keeping them safe. It's with my daughter, she's got this open heart and we're all defined and she's extremely competitive for no reason. She doesn't care. She doesn't want to win. She just wants to validate herself. And so knowing that means I'm always validating her. So just knowing these aspects of the kids as I can kind of tailor my parenting to be more of a partner, a guide versus these are these humans I need to control or that they're an extension of me. I think that's the big one is that moms are like, my kids are an extension of me. They're absolutely not. They're not. And so who they are isn't a reflection of you. Now, ultimately, I mean, it's a reflection of your guidance, but not a reflection of who you are as a human being, which is why it's so important, I think, for moms to know who they are.
100%.
And most don't. And so they make their whole identity. Like a lot of women have kids because of that, like because they don't know who they are and they need that validation. They need a reason, which is that's not a great reason to have kids,
Yeah.
And then I think they realize that.
Well, I think there's so much truth to when you are grounded in who you are and you have that like knowing yourself, really truly loving yourself and fully trusting yourself that like the things that your kids do or don't do, like just don't take so personally or just don't get so bent or stressed out about. Where I'm currently navigating, and I'd be interested in your perspective on, is like in isolation, I'm like, yeah, this totally makes sense. I have 4 kids, which feels like 4,000 kids. And so sometimes it feels like if one person is like, using their voice or processing or doing what they need to do in that moment, it affects the people around them. And so, like, being able to hold the space for what everyone needs, in the car
Yeah, 100%. I get it.
or like in the relationships with each other. So, my two of my kids, their birthdays are 6 days apart, my two oldest, and their human designs, I can't remember what they are off the top of my head, but are also very similar, but also different enough. And so, with them specifically, I see a lot of tension. And then they're also like neurodivergent in their own ways. And I feel like they dopamine seek by like picking. And so I would just be interested, you have kids that are of similar ages. So if that is something you've navigated, what has that looked like?
Yeah, I mean, Ford and Ruby are constantly going at it, but I also have to remind myself this is how they are going to develop the abilities to be out in the world and socialize and work through conflict. So that's like how I approach it is how can I help them solve this conflict by helping them understand themselves, like stay true to themselves, but also try and understand their sibling. So it's even like looking at their perspective because that helps you communicate, like helps you understand why that person's communicating that way and that it's not personal. So to me, I feel like my job always is just to kind of always be explaining the other one to the other and helping this one not take this personally. It's just a pattern or it's just this particular aspect of your brother or sister. That's not who they are. So I think I'm always just constantly, communicating that and then always trying to help bring them back to, well, art, because a lot of the fights are them being not self. A lot of the fights are them not following their authority and they're like Ford has an open throat. So he'll just talk, to hear himself talk. He always has to get the last word because there's like just this a lot of energy being built up. So it's just reminding him, did that feel necessary to say? Or, think about why you needed to say that. Why do you feel you need to say something right now? And he'll tell me, I just feel like I have a lot of energy. I feel like I have a lot to say. So then guiding him to maybe dispel that energy a different way. Knowing these things and just like I say guide a lot because that's really what I feel like I'm doing is just constantly guiding people back to themselves, but also towards where they want to go. And that includes my kids. Even Aurora at 4 months, I can tell the impact she had, like that she's an emotional authority and she's just emotional. And every Wednesday, we call it Wacky Wednesday because she's got just an obscene amount of energy because she's at an emotional high. But if the other kids are around, they start going at it. It's because they're absorbing her emotion. Like everybody's really emotional. Like Ruby all of a sudden has gotten very emotional, but she's not usually that way. Well, I'm like, oh, that's right. The baby. The baby's the only one in this family that has the emotions. And now everybody's emotional. So just knowing that and not taking it personally and helping them not take it personally. Because when you understand the other person, one, that's like the tool of building empathy. But behavioral context is important, I think, especially in those dynamics, especially those kids going out into the real world and realizing, well, what that person says and how that person behaves has nothing to do with me and my worth and my value. I feel like that's kind of the core of what I'm trying to get across in my parenting with them.
We've had a lot of conversations with my oldest over the last year because he just absorbs everyone's energy as his own and teaching him that discernment of like, what is yours and what is someone else's? And like, what are the factors at play that are like guiding the way that that person's reacting? And like, it's not yours to carry. Like, you got to brush it off and leave it at school. Like, bringing it home with you and owning it as yours is doing nothing other than causing chaos that you don't even want.
I always say, because I was completely open emotionally as a kid, I was just deeply affected by everybody. And then I tried, it's okay to care. I don't need to carry it. I don't need to figure it out. I don't need to do anything about it. It's not my emotional work. So, and a lot of the reason why why they're trying to get some resolution there is because they don't want to feel uncomfortable anymore. They don't want to feel that emotional energy. Like if somebody's going through something at school, they want that person to feel better immediately so they don't have to feel uncomfortable anymore. Like them don't want to feel uncomfortable anymore. So just helping them learn how to process that.
From a practical standpoint, Are there any particular resources that you have used around human design with your kids? Like, do they have awareness on like what their chart looks like? Or is this all like you
This is
in
all me.
your memorization
This is all
self-guiding?
me right now. Well, I mean, my whole job, like not my whole job, but a big chunk of my job is certifying people in it. So I'm always like remembering as I'm teaching and things like that. But no, there's not a lot on parenting by design because, and I have started doing more like content around it and I will probably do a lot more. But mostly one, because a lot of people just don't have kids, so they can't apply it or not multiple or enough to really have like a lot of context. But two, behavioral development and just the development of kids. So I have a chart. It's the you and your child chart. And I talk about it in stages. I talk about each thing in stages of their life because they're going to be completely different than the other ones. But as far as like the kids knowing their design, not yet. It's all based on like what I'm telling them. But in July, we're starting, I call it life school.
Love it.
So 2 times a week, I'm going to be teaching them about themselves. So through human design, but I'm also going to be teaching them about how the brain works so they can understand before they get on the internet and things like that, like trolls and that those people, like what's going on with those people and why they're behaving that way. And then my
Mhm.
husband's going to teach them, how to do the dishwasher and all these things that I have overfunctioned and done for them. And so they will know. I'm going to build a curriculum, which I probably will eventually share.
I feel like that is such a need. Yeah, because I think in so many of the things that I have learned and discovered over the years, I'm like, and of course, our journeys are supposed to pan out the way that they are. I believe that. But like, how much resistance could I have saved myself from if I had had this information at 8 years old?
Well, I also think about the reason I haven't done a lot of the parenting stuff either is because it doesn't matter if the mom is out of alignment. So
Mhm.
that's kind of why selfish exists. It's like, girl, I can't even help you parent unless you're ready to focus on yourself, unless you can make choices for yourself that have nothing to do with being good or being a good mom. You have to be in energetic integrity in order for them. It's all geometry. So if you're off, they're off. Even if we like did the practical things, you're not being who you were supposed to be. They chose you for a reason and you're not being that. So it's kind of, you gotta let the kids be uncomfortable because that's, I don't feel like I need to like be any type of mom because my parent or my kids chose me. So they knew who I was. They knew I was like, I like my alone time. They know I'm a little bit like maybe cold or selfish or whatever these things could be. They chose it anyway. So I'm not going to not be those things. Even if that's their karma, even if that's their dharma, even if that's the gospel of their life is that they're mad that their mom was XYZ, you're welcome. Like that's what you needed.
You know, the thought that came to mind when you shared that is like how much of this fear around raising girls or kids any type of way is like another flavor of trying to be a good mom and good girl conditioning and like fulfilling the expectations.
Yes, I think with girls, it's more important, in my opinion, only because society is really programming women. And so I knew that when I found out I was pregnant with Ruby and I knew it was a girl, is when I left my marriage, I was 6 weeks pregnant. Because I knew, one, I had entered in that marriage out of alignment, like misalignment, not loving myself. He represented all of my patterns. So I don't blame him at all. Like he was a beautiful representation of my patterns. And I ultimately knew that I would not be able to model for my child what I wanted to model. So it's not about like trying to be something. It's just, what do I want my daughter to grow up seeing? I didn't want her to grow up seeing that dynamic. And I wanted somebody that was true to themselves. My mom's a big people pleaser. She's just a caretaker and she overfunctions in that way. I just didn't want that for my daughters. I wanted my daughters to be, I want people to be a little afraid of my girls. I do. I want them to be a little afraid of them because I think most women, if they're being true to themselves, are a little scary. So it's not like I want them to be scary people. I just want them to be themselves, which a woman that's being true to herself is terrifying. That's why there's a whole like structure in place to make sure that we're not. So I do want them to be a little afraid. I do want people to be like, I can't believe she just did that. Like Ruby, when she was little, if people went to grab, she would always wear this stack of necklaces. And she was like 3. It's probably dangerous now I think about it. But people would go to reach and grab them, and she would just remove their hand. Wouldn't say a word. And she tells you exactly what she wants. She
Yep.
asks for what she wants. She tells you how she feels. She's not afraid of you being uncomfortable with how she feels and or is asking for what she wants. She's not afraid of hearing no. And that's what I wanted. But I realized, she had to have learned that from me. Like I had to have modeled that
Mm-hmm.
to her, or she wouldn't have been able to like have the language to be able to do it. So that was my most important goal, was that one, that I modeled it, that I was focused on myself and I'm fully expressed as who I am. So then they feel full permission to be exactly who they are. But then I'm also in a relationship and a dynamic where that is being honored
Yeah.
and nurtured. And my husband definitely honors that and nurtures it and is a big supporter of that. And even with the kids as well.
Yeah.
You just have to be able to receive that, I think, is the hardest thing. I think a lot of women struggle with being able to receive that level of expression, but also support and reverence.
Well, that's like, oh, we just opened up a whole other can of worms. The ability to both like really understand and step into your power and be able to receive.
Which is so powerful in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's cute to not ask for help when that is what is necessary. Like everything that comes to you from God, source, universe has to come through you or somebody else. You have to be able to receive. You have to be able to ask people for help. Yeah. And it's a gift. It's a receiving and giving and receiving are two sides of the same coin when they're pure. When you're not giving to get, you're giving, it feels just as good as receiving.
Yeah. The reciprocity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I know you also just have a baby, but tell us more about what is alive in your world of work. If something sparked in this conversation and someone wants to get connected with what you're doing today, where can we find you and what is on the docket for 2026 and beyond?
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at the Paige Christiansen. There you'll also be able to find Selfish, which is the company we're building. And it's really like a media company, education company around human design, but through the lens of, if you think about media or talk shows and just podcasts in general and reality TV, we always use them as like to get us thinking about other people, right? It's like socioeconomics. But what if we understood people at a different level? Like what if we understood while we're watching like the Summer House reunion that Amanda is completely open emotionally, and she's not on beta blockers. She's just open emotionally and they're emotionally numb typically. So like,
Yeah.
wouldn't we watch that differently? Wouldn't we feel differently about her? But then also, wouldn't we also be learning about ourselves? We would be like, oh, I wonder, do I act like this? So that's essentially the concept of Selfish, is being able to focus on self-education through relationships and other people in media and culture. And we are building out a ton of reports. So we have the Selfish individual report, which teaches you about your human design, but through the lens of like being the main character and literally living your life as if it's a movie, because it is. It's all a movie. I'm getting ready to do one for Father's Day called Daddy Issue, like the Daddy Issue, like
Mm-hmm.
daddy issues.
Love it.
And so it's going to be specific to like where daddy issues show up in your chart and kind of how to move through it. But it always bringing people back to the basics of their human design. So that's what's really alive for me right now, has been building that differently than I had built the other companies. So you can find me there.
So cool. Okay. Last question I ask every guest on the show is, what does growth look like for you in this season?
It has been actually allowing my husband to come in and support me in the business as COO and building
Ooh.
this. Yeah. And he's like a very talented, very established COO, like for big fortune companies, right? And he saw what I was doing. He was like, this could be huge. I believe in you, but these things need to happen in order for this to be scalable. And so the growth edge for me is being okay not doing it alone, because I've always been like a single mom, built the company from the ground up. And now I'm like, people are going to know that he's helping me, and it's not going to be as like noteworthy.
Baddie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's been the growth edge in this season, is rewiring that belief, because it's kept me really small.
Yeah. Of the being able to receive help and letting go of the identity of the, like, look what I did all by myself in this season that was so hard. Like, that is an identity in itself.
And I think because so many women are single and they're single moms and they're really trying to like do it on their own, that like it was great for me at that time and I was a great model for them, but I don't want to model that. I don't think that that's the thing to strive for necessarily. Like I want people to like feel happy and healthy and pure in their energy and have somebody and many people supporting them in that.
Yeah. Well, and you're in a whole new era of your life now.
And I never would have been able to receive him if I hadn't done all of that. So it all happened for a reason.
But still the tension between like logically knowing that you're in a different place and the identity evolution that has to come with like letting go of the seasons that served you really well and you worked really hard for is uniquely challenging, even if it's something you coach other women on.
Well, especially when it worked, you're like, well, it did work, but it's not who I am anymore.
Yeah. Ugh. Thank you for sharing that. Gosh, this has been so delightful. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, not only as a business owner, but as a mom and just for a woman who's walking this path. All right. For anyone who's listening, if something in this conversation sparked something for you, please don't hesitate to shoot either one of us a message. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Hey friend, I hope this conversation sparked something real in you, something that feels like truth, curiosity, or the courage to keep becoming. If this episode resonated, I'd love for you to share it. Take a screenshot, post it to your stories, or send it to one of your friends. You can always find me over on Instagram at Emily Rushel, where I love continuing these conversations and hearing your takeaways. Truly, your DMs are one of my favorite parts of podcasting, so don't be shy. I'd love to reflect and connect with you over there. I'm so grateful to be surrounded by a community of women who ask hard questions, sit in the discomfort of the unknown, blaze new paths forward, and ultimately come home to their wild and waking selves. See you next week.